Buddha and the Seeker of God. Once in the serene forests of India, there lived a young man named Devadatta. He was a devoted seeker, traveling from village to village, temple to temple, questioning sages, priests, and scholars. He had only one question: who is God? Many gave him answers. Some said God was in the heavens ruling over creation. Others claimed he was beyond human understanding. Some pointed to idols, while others spoke of an eternal force, but none of the answers satisfied him. One day, a traveler told him about a great teacher, the Buddha, who resided in a monastery near the Ganges River. Filled with hope, Devadatta made the long journey and finally arrived at the Buddha's feet. Bowing with deep respect, he asked, "O wise one, who is God?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Walk with me." Devadatta was puzzled but followed in silence. They walked through the forest, listening to the songs of birds, feeling the wind on their faces, and watching the sun cast golden light through the trees. After a while, they came across a dying bird. Its wings trembled, and its breath was weak. Devadatta frowned, feeling pity but unsure of what to do. The Buddha knelt beside the bird, cupped it in his hands, and softly whispered, "Do not be afraid." The bird gazed at him, its fear fading as it rested in his gentle touch. Then the Buddha asked, "Devadatta, if God were here, what would he do?" Devadatta thought and replied, "He would show kindness." The Buddha smiled and continued walking. Soon they reached a river bank where an old man sat, weeping. His family had abandoned him and he was left alone with no food or shelter. The Buddha sat beside him, offered him water, and spoke with kindness. The old man wiped his tears, feeling comforted. The Buddha then turned to Devadatta and asked, "If God were here, what would he do?" Devadatta hesitated but answered, "He would show compassion." The Buddha nodded. They continued walking until they met a warrior boasting about his victories in battle. He spoke of how he had conquered lands and defeated enemies. The Buddha listened patiently and then asked, "What brings you true peace?" The warrior fell silent. After a while, he sighed, "Not war, but understanding." The Buddha looked at Devadatta and asked, "If God were here, what would he do?" Devadatta whispered, "He would bring wisdom." At last, the Buddha and Devadatta reached a hilltop. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. The Buddha turned to Devadatta and asked, "Now, tell me, who is God?" Devadatta's eyes widened with realization. God is not someone sitting in the sky waiting to be found. God is in kindness, in compassion, in wisdom, and in the love we share. The Buddha smiled. Yes, do not seek God in distant places or in mere words. If you wish to know God, become kindness itself, become compassion, become wisdom. That is where God truly resides. From that day on, Devadatta no longer searched for God outside. Instead, he became a man of kindness, compassion, and wisdom, for he had finally understood God was not a being to be found, but a truth to be lived. And so his search ended, and his journey toward enlightenment began. Lesson: this story teaches us that God is not merely a distant figure to be worshipped, but is present in the way we live our lives. In every act of kindness, in every moment of compassion, and in every step toward wisdom, we bring God into the world. Instead of asking, "Who is God?" we should ask, "How can I live as an expression of the divine?" Would you like any modifications or additions?